give it a second. Okay, so our disclaimer one more time, this call is being recorded and we place our recording on our YouTube channel. If you don't want to get recorded, you may want to drop off now. And again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining for another session of Azure Power Lunch. And today we are going to be talking about Azure Cognitive Services, uh, Translate Services. You know, there are a number of services under the umbrella of Azure Cognitive Services, and Translate is one of those that service that we are going to be talking about. This is a quick agenda. We are going to talk about concept and just want to kind of the theme of our discussion, if you may have noticed, is about the how you these services, most of the services that we talk about or features or preview, how an enterprise uh, can effectively use it. And when we talk about enterprise, we're talking about organization which are large enterprises. They're security conscious. They have certain security, privacy, and compliance policies that they have to adhere to. So that's the feature we are targeting, and that's why you see a lot of emphasis on private link, on kind of a network isolation in these sessions, because most of the organizations, a large organization, for them, for those organizations, these are some of the key things that they care about. So that's will be our theme of our discussion um, today. So let's quickly move on. So what is Azure Translate Service? Quick summary here. It's a translate service. It can translate text, it can translate documents, it can do it in multiple languages. Um, and in regards to translation of text, it is kind of a synchronous API call. You make the call, send the text, it translates it. It doesn't store any data. So no customer data is stored in the service. So if you are translating some confidential stuff, don't have to worry about that data being, stored somewhere. Okay. Second thing is it can remove profanity. So if there are bad words, and you can use a glossary for those terms as well, they will be removed from that text. Okay. And one important thing is there are different ways of doing it, or different modes of doing it. You can either remove the word entirely, or you can replace it with asterisk. So these are some of the things that it allows you to do. In regards to batch or document translation, it takes advantage of storage account, and we will look in the demo as well. Okay, so this is kind of a quick summary of services. As I said, very simple service. Translation, have text input, text output. If you're just doing text translation, if there are documents, um, and we will look in the demo, basically you place the documents in a storage account, in a blob container, and it picks those documents up from there, translates it, and put those in a different container that you assign it to. So, and um, it does more like a batch process. Okay. And one important detail that I forgot, you can use your custom models as well. Okay. So you can create your own AI model for translation, upload it in the service, and it will use those model while you translate your text. So based on your own custom models. Uh, this is what we talked about. Kind of a quick summary, common use cases. This is what you use for. And the thing is, these are the available SKU. So just keep in mind that these are, there is a free tier, just like with most of the cognitive services that you can use for testing and just learning about the service. And then there are different tiers, paid tiers, different level. There is also a container-based tier as well. So you can have that capability in a container, run it locally, and that we are not going to be covering in this one. This is only for the multi-tenant service that you create an instance of in Azure and work with it. Okay, the container tier, you have to basically um, uh, kind of get an approval or some sort. I mean, submit your use case. I think there is some details around it, but at the moment we are not covering. We are just covering the multi-tenant model. This is not covered. The container model is not covered in this. And this is kind of a quick overview of different feature, what services are available, what tiers are available, and there are some commitment tiers as well as pay as you go. And then you have the D3, which is disconnected tier or container tier, and which we are not going to be discussing in this particular topic. Okay. So before I go into the architecture, any questions? Okay. So this is the kind of a recommended architecture that most organization enterprises will go with. You have your translate service that is running in Azure, and you create an instance of it, of course. And that instance, then you create a private endpoint to it, drop it in your workload VNet where your web app, or I mean, in this example, I'm using web app, but that can be any other service that it may be running in Azure that needs to do text translation. And this is, we are talking about text translation, not document translation. Connects to the private endpoint of the service. And you see here two key vaults. So just keep in mind that the service itself uses a key to authenticate, just like you have kind of, it's an API key. So treat it as a database connection string, and you will may want to put it in a key vault and access it as a key vault reference if you're using a web app or in a secure location. So you can access it at runtime and authenticate to the API itself. Okay, so that's how you're going to be doing authentication. There's a second key vault there as well, which is connected to, you see, the arrow going from translate service to that key vault. This is the key vault where you will be storing or the encryption key if you are using custom models. So those custom models that you use to make sure that, for the compliance reasons, if you don't do anything, they are encrypted by Microsoft Managed Key. But if you want to bring in your own keys to encrypt that, then you will have to use a key vault, and you will have to give the managed identity of the translate service access to that key vault, um, and you have to enable trusted services, and you can lock down that key vault entirely. That's why the statement there that you can lock down the key vault, no internet access or anything. In that case, only the translate service will be able to access and get the keys that it needs to encrypt um, the custom models. Okay, so that's for that scenario. Okay, so that's one of the use cases. Very simple. I mean, in the nature itself of the service is very simple. It's you send some text, it translates it. Okay. Now we look at the second scenario where you have a bunch of documents that either from legal or I mean, that you want to translate. What you do is you move those documents into a blob container, and from that blob container, um, and then you have another blob container for output documents, for one for source, one for destination. And when you call the API, same thing. Almost everything is the same, but except that now translate service is connected to two containers. And by the way, these two containers can be in same storage account, or they can be in a different storage account based on your organization and all your needs. That's definitely can happen. And then with that, you can, and just keep in mind that both of uh, uh, these storage containers, You can use storage side encryption and all that, and that's why you see a key vault over there. And one other thing is the storage account, you can completely cut it out, or I mean, kind of block it, any public access, and allow access only to the trusted services. So as I said, Translate service adheres to the trusted services model. So you just need the managed identity and the trusted service access, and it should be able to access the storage account and do what it needs to do. So kind of once again, the same concept that we talk about in our most of our session, that we talk about, that ability to do kind of network isolation and things like that, which kind of key for the enterprises. In the rest of the diagram, there is kind of not much change to it. Okay, I should have moved um, this one. Okay, so that's pretty much it in terms of the architecture. Let's take a look at a quick demo. Okay, so let's go in here. I hope everybody can see my um, browser, and let me see. Okay, so the way you create the service is very simple. Let me open a new tab. In the meantime, any questions? Okay. So we just go into cognitive services, and we just create a cognitive service, and that's pretty much it. And with that, you will be able to access that cognitive service. You call the Translate API, and you will go from there. As you can see, this is pretty straightforward and vanilla. You have identity. Yes, you want to turn it on, or you want to use it. Supports both system managed identity and system assigned managed identity, or user assigned managed identity. Both of it supports. Okay, we are not going to create a new instance. We already have one instance, and that's the one we are going to be using for our example. I want to show you some of the things here, some of the things that you may be interested. So this is just a general overview. By the way, um, you know it has um, kind of a uh, you know, uh, try it out as well. So you can try it out directly from here, and translate into different languages and things like that. So a good way just to test this thing out. In terms of, I just want to jump into the networking side of it. As you can see, I have blocked all public access except from selected networks. So I have my IP. This is the IP of my outbound home internet, so router. So this is the IP that I have allowed access to, so I can, play with the service. And then I have this private endpoint. So I have, for my demo, I have created a VNet, dropped a private endpoint there. I have a app service that is VNet integrated into that VM, and that's how I'm going to be kind of running this demo. Okay, so that's the demo will be all about. So that's the networking side of it. If we look at the identity side, I have created a system managed identity, system assigned managed identity. So that's, you can see it here. In terms of pricing tier, I'm using an S1 pricing tier, and that's the one I'm kind of taking advantage of. And that's pretty much it. Okay. Oh yeah, encryption. So I'm using customer managed key. I'm using a key vault, and let's take a look at that key vault as well. So there is this key vault that I have. Let me open it up, and I just want to show you that um, kind of the if we go into the access policies, this is the um, this is the managed identity that I have given access to, to the key vault. And In regards to networking, once again, selected networks, as you can see, there's no private endpoint, and allow trusted services to bypass this firewall. So basically, only trusted services can bypass it, and um, uh, one of those is my translate service. Okay, so I hope everybody gets that. Okay, now let's go into um, the homepage. So we are just gonna first translate some text. So we are gonna say good morning and happy Friday, and we will translate it in French. And by the way, behind the scene, I'm calling the APIs and doing that, and this is French, and let's try it in Spanish. Oh, sorry, I was supposed to do this. As you can see, this is in Spanish. So, this is text in Spanish. So the point is, um, you can start, I mean, very simple API, and you can use it in web app. I'm just using an example of a web app. You can use it from anywhere else. Okay. In regards to documents, before I do this demo, I want to show you the setup for the documents. It has a few other moving parts that you need to be aware of. Okay. So I have this storage account that I have created. And in this storage account, let me go back. Yes, this is my storage account. And in this storage account, I have created two containers. If I go into the blob containers, the logs container is automatically created. And as you can see, these are two containers. They're both private. So there is no public access to these. No, I mean, nobody can access it over the internet, of course. This is the source. In the source container, I have placed this document, and let's take a look at this document, what it is. If we look at view, so this is a test for translation. I mean, we can put any text, we can put multiple documents, things like that. Okay. So that's that. In terms of the setup, um, I want to show you two things here. First of all, access control. Look at the role assignments. And if I go in here, there is a storage blob data contributor. That access you have to give to the managed IP, either user or system managed identity of the translate service. So that's what I'm doing here. Look at that. This translate service has now access storage blob data contributor access to this storage account. So it can play with, kind of a create blobs, delete blobs, and all that stuff. So that access is there. That's one piece. Second piece is in terms of networking. Once again, there are no private endpoints. Um, all access is only through the virtual networks. I don't have any virtual networks and private IP addresses. So everything, so no one can access this storage account over the public internet. The only way, the one access that I have open is from my, as I said, router IP address, so I can make changes to it, and trusted services. Once again, trusted services are the access that from trusted services access is enabled for this storage account. Same thing that we did with keyboard. So just same theme here to make sure that we maintain network isolation. Okay. Any questions, folks? Okay. So and if somebody can read the questions from the chat window, I'm afraid I cannot see it, but let me see.
Read, there is nothing on the chat.
Okay, thanks, Alan.
Feel free to
Thanks,
write
Alan.
them off,
Yeah,
and I can read them. Sure.
thank you. Thanks. Okay, so once again, I have in source document, I don't have anything in the destination. So what I'm gonna do is I'm now gonna call the API, and we are going to um, execute this. So this is the API, and Basically, when I click this button, it's going to call the API to run the doc translation, and I want to translate it to German. So I'm going to use the, sorry, and I'm going to say translate docs. It says accepted, means that it has started processing document translation. So let's go in here in the destination. So far, there is nothing. Let's refresh it. And by the way, as I said, this day. I mean, if there are a lot of documents, it will take some time. But let's see. Let's see the translation. We go in here and view. It has translated in German. I don't know German, so if somebody knows it, I hope this is the right translation. And one test that we can do is we are just gonna copy this text and we're gonna paste it here and we're gonna say translate it in English. So let's translate this text. So it does output exactly the text that we had in the document. So just to come a simple test, and just keep in mind, translation is contextual. So if you have complex and large sentences, they may not be translated exactly. I mean, if you are doing a reverse translation, they may not be reverse translated exactly um, the way um, that you wanted or the way originally it was. So let's say you have some text in English, you translate it in French, and then you translate it back to English. If there were like large complex sentences, the reverse translation may not be the same than the original one. Okay. And by the way, just look at that. I mean, I want you to pay attention to the JSON that is kind of being outputted here. You have it is detecting the language, so you don't have to tell it what language it is. You can tell it, but it is detecting it, and it is the score is 1, so it is pretty confident, 100% confidence that this is the language of the source, and then you are translating it into English. Okay, so that's kind of a plain and simple. And just to show you the code, I took the easy way out. I'm using Visual Studio and um, I'm using C sharp since this is my language of choice. And as you can see here, this is the API for translation. And just keep in mind, folks, you see here two different URL links. The first one, if you are not using a private endpoint, and the second one, if you are using a private endpoint. I have outlined it in the presentation as well. So if we go to the slide deck, let me just quickly go in here. In the slide deck, I mean, this is just some kind of a summary of what we discussed. But in here, if you are using private endpoint, you will have to use this URL and this path, and yeah, kind of the URL changes if you are using, and they call it a custom URL, but in any case, the URL will change if you are using a, yes, okay. So once again, custom models glossary. So I saw the question that came up in the chat window. I think it's around how you, train the translator for domain specific stuff. That would be custom translator. You have to upload your own model and trained model and use them for translation, and or maybe glossary for certain terms that will help as well, but that would be the route to go. Okay, I hopefully addressed that question. Addresses your question. And so that's, sorry, coming back to this, just be careful with that because that may give you a heartburn. Because I was working with someone, and that was that they were stuck at this, like, okay, I just created a private endpoint, and they were trying to use this URL after creating the private endpoint, and it wasn't working out. So they have to um, I mean, and then we found out that this is the URL for translator. Okay. So that's the if that's the URL that you will be using. And if you are using a kind of a document translation, you will have to send a JSON out, and there have links to the documentation. You can look at it. Basically, that JSON should have the source and the destination blobs, and that's you will have to um, you know kind of you have to provide that information here. So very simple, as you can see. And by the way, one other thing is, if you look at the documentation, they have provided example for all different languages. So you can, you just pick the language of your choice and start going with that. And if you are using a language that is not there, once again, this is all REST APIs, folks. So just use the REST APIs and you can go from there. I mean, any language that support HTTP based kind of interaction, or that's a REST making REST API call. That's all you need, and the SDKs are nothing but just a wrapper. So that's what we are kind of using here. So with that, that's pretty much I had for today. There is a link to some resources here. So please feel free to take a look at it. Um, any questions, comments, feedback,
Nothing on the chat, Naveed, so far.
folks? Then I will give everybody their 2 minutes back. Thank you for joining, and hope to see everybody next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Everybody have a safe and happy weekend. Thank you.